From the Mumbai studios of Republic TV, it's time for Arnab Goswami on The Debate.
Republic's global reporting team, along with millions of Ukrainians, woke up to loud explosions in the eastern city of Kharkiv. It's been exactly a month since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Countless of lives have been lost. 15,300 Russian soldiers have been killed. But even till today, Ukrainians stand tight. They have been able to protect their territory. The latest reports suggest that the Russian troops have been pushed back 35 kilometers away from the capital city of Ukraine. But we are still staring at a humanitarian catastrophe. The question is, who is going to blink first? Republic media team is still tracking every development. We are on the ground. Now we are tracking President Joe Biden's visit to Poland tomorrow.
And what's the mood in Warsaw before that visit, Shawan? What are the expectations? Joe Biden said, "I'll speak a lot when I am in Warsaw." Is he going to escalate this?
Well, in fact, Arnab, we spoke to the Consul General here in Warsaw to get a sense of how exactly is Ukraine looking at this entire development. Let's not forget that even President Zelensky now understands that they have been egged to this entire confrontation. And the fact of the matter is that in the emotional bid that was made by President Zelensky, he's not very hopeful that Europe, or for that matter, NATO, is going to be able to do something for them. And that's exactly why he's saying that if you can't, just make it very clear that we are going to fight this all by themselves. And that's exactly the mood right now. They're saying that they're not going to give up. One thing is very clear, even if Putin does not blink first, President Zelensky is also in no mood to back out. The question is that what is it going to finally lead to, because it has its own global ramifications. Here in Poland, the fact is that they want to give the kind of support that Ukraine needs. And maximum amount of refugees are also coming in. Over 10 million refugees have already moved in. So as far as Poland is concerned, they are willing to give the kind of support that they need, even in terms of military support that Poland is willing to give in terms of military equipments that are being sent out. So clearly the mood here is that if President Biden comes here, what sort of support will he be actually giving to Ukraine? Will it mean more sanctions? Will it mean that some sort of an adjustment that is going to be made as far as NATO is concerned?
Well, I think closer support, and I think he's trying to make a statement a month into the war. Shawan, thank you. A lot of people appreciating the great job you're doing from different locations, first across Ukraine, and now he's in Warsaw. Shawan is going back and forth across Europe and Ukraine to be bringing you the latest from the war zone. Thank you, Shawan. And ladies and gentlemen, on a day when the Russian naval vessels have been hit by missiles, NATO's decision to send more anti-aircraft and anti-ship missiles to Ukraine is a provocation. Russia is pushed to the wall. Will Putin hit back harder? What can he do? Let's debate.
The fighting hasn't ended.
From Mariupol to Berdyansk, Russians felt they had an edge until Ukrainians struck. Look at this video of how Russian vessels were hit by Ukrainian missiles.
The attack on the Russian landing ship on a day NATO has promised anti-ship missiles, and it comes 2 days after Russian media released a video claiming capture of this port town.
A huge Russian landing ship has now anchored itself in Berdyansk, which is a city liberated during the Russian operation here. More vehicles, more armaments are being delivered into Ukraine proper. These are some of the vehicles, armored personnel carriers, that have already been disgorged by this huge landing marine ship.
Who exactly is going to blink first? It appears that Putin is unlikely to give up so soon, and it turns out that the world is headed to another long battle, with NATO now essentially promising that they are going to strengthen Ukraine.
Ви маєте не менше 20 тисяч танків. Україна просила відсоток. 1% від усіх ваших танків. Віддати нам чи продати нам. Але ми не маємо поки що ясної відповіді.
Allies are also equipping Ukraine with significant military supplies, including anti-tank and air defense systems and drones, which are proving highly effective, as well as substantial financial and humanitarian aid.
What Putin does next will decide the course of the war. And this is when Joe Biden's visit to Poland, neighboring of Ukraine, becomes critical. Let's debate.
They say they don't want to make it. They say we'll do everything possible to avoid a direct confrontation. But ladies and gentlemen, as our hashtag says today, it is NATO versus Putin. It has become NATO versus Putin. It is being seen in every way as NATO versus Putin. So we must discuss the consequences of this becoming NATO versus Putin. I'd welcome back Burzin Wagmar of the South Asia Institute at SOAS, Donald Jensen, who's Director for Russia at Europe at the US Institute of Peace, and he's a former diplomat at the US Embassy in Moscow. And Ronald Gregor Suni is a distinguished professor of history, professor of political science, University of Michigan, and emeritus professor of political science and history at Chicago University. And Robert Bell is distinguished professor of the practice at the Georgia Institute of Technology. He was also former US President Clinton's National Security Council Senior Director for Defense Policy and Arms Control for 7 years. Patrick Kugel is a senior analyst at the Polish Institute of International Affairs from Warsaw, where the big meeting happens tomorrow. Tatiana Kokhareva is deputy chief of the Sputnik websites. Dr. Sergei Oznobishev is head of the Group for Strategic Studies at the Primakov Institute of International Relations at Moscow. And we also have with us Mohammad Hussein Malik, who is former ambassador of Iran to China. I think I just lost the line there with him. And, oh, he's back there. And we're joined right now by Donald Jensen. He's just joined us in the bottom right corner. Ladies and gentlemen, he's director for Russia and Europe at the US Institute of Peace. I just introduced him. And of course, the very respected defense expert, strategic affairs expert, General G.D. Bakshi from New Delhi. Thank you very much. Now, if I can begin with you, Professor Ronald, my question to you, Professor Suni, is this, that there was every attempt to say we will not make this NATO versus Russia. But increasingly, it's appearing to everyone that this is becoming NATO versus Russia. And which can only complicate things, don't you think? I mean, this was a time I thought to start de-escalating things. And I don't think NATO is doing enough in that direction. What do you think, sir, Professor?
I think that this struggle has been NATO versus Russia for quite a long time. And in fact, Putin always saw this as a threat to Russia, the expansion of NATO to the east. What was surprising is that he decided to answer that threat by this unprovoked and disastrous invasion of a neighbor, Ukraine, in a kind of bizarre campaign, as he put it, to denazify the country, to unify one people, Ukrainians and Russians, in some kind of single entity or state. These things don't make much sense except as propaganda for the Russian people. But he's created a situation which has only now strengthened NATO, unified NATO, and probably caused what sadly will be a new Cold War with new walls between the East and the West.
If it's just a Cold War, many people would heave a sigh of relief. But Donald Jensen, it is looking more worrisome than that. And why doesn't NATO just say that Ukraine will not be part of NATO? Why is NATO not saying that? Why are they talking about an open door policy? Why are they saying we reaffirm our commitment to NATO's open door policy under Article 10 of the Washington Treaty when there's open talk of the nuclear card? Just saying that Ukraine will not be part of NATO can actually end this and put the pressure back actually on Putin, who's going around saber rattling about the nuclear button.
Well, I thank you for having me on, by the way. They could say that, but that goes against the NATO principles, which are theoretically an open door to anybody who qualifies and approves. And it's a decision of outside applicant members, as we've seen in the several rounds previously, whether they want to join or not. I think we have to be very careful not to put the emphasis in this crisis on NATO or NATO provocations. NATO has not been provocative. We have lived together side by side with Russia for almost 2 decades. It was really a crisis created much more recently by the Kremlin to justify whatever imperial ambitions that it has. So what I'm also concerned about is the issue of accidental conflict. We saw last week, we saw Russians attack a base in Western Ukraine, very close to the Polish border. There are a large number of NATO troops in Eastern Europe along the periphery with Russia. That's likely to increase. So I think everybody ought to cool off a little bit. Everybody ought to go back to the negotiating table. But unfortunately, this crisis that Russia has first invented and then provoked makes it very difficult for cooler heads to prevail. I hope the unity we've shown in the last few weeks continues. I think we've got to see something from the Russian side to de-escalate this crisis. And from a Kremlin that, by all appearances, is operating in an information vacuum, it's very hard to see where that's going to come from. That's very worrying. And as you say, sir, the chances of NATO and Russia being more directly in conflict seem to increase by the day.
No, but the crux of the entire attack on Ukraine for Russia has been that Ukraine is allying with the West and militarizing itself against Russia. Tatiana, today the war unleashed by Russia has given NATO the impetus, to step up its defenses for its forces in Eastern Europe. And Putin thought that he could blitzkrieg his way into Kiev, but he's obviously badly miscalculated. And things are backfiring, Tatiana. You're facing more NATO troops. Soldiers from US, Italy, Turkey, Croatia, Montenegro are all joining this new NATO battle group in Hungary. Even Germany will provide troops for a new NATO battle group in Slovakia. So is it not backfiring for you?
Of course it's not. And also, Arnab, I think we discussed this. I don't know where that whole idea of a blitzkrieg operation came from, because, again, it's a symbolic day for the world, for sure, but not just because it's been 1 month of the Russian special ops. Today is also 23 years, I think, since the NATO bombings of Yugoslavia, the one that was done without a UN mandate, without UN approval. They just bombed it.
Why are you bringing that up?
Because because there's a point there. The points made by my 2 American counterparts just prove just how little Americans are even willing to comprehend other cultures, generally speaking. It is not an artificial conflict. The Ukraine has been in a very difficult ethnic situations for many years, but for the last 8 years, it's been involved in a war that nobody seems to remember. Because everybody says, oh, look, this conflict started on the 24th of March. Well, it did not. It started when a group of Nazis decided to overthrow a democratic president in 2014. Nobody wanted it to be a blitzkrieg operation. In order for it to have been a blitzkrieg operation, it should have been a NATO-style bombing. to bomb cities to the ground from the air, which is not what Russia has been doing, and it never intended to do, because we need to preserve the civilian population. The civilian population of the southeast, that is largely Russian-speaking population, that doesn't need to be in the crossfire here.
No, yeah, okay, Tatiana, see, what was said just a while back by Donald was he talked about an accidental escalation, an accidental war breaking out, an accidental and quick escalation. No, he said that. You heard him. He spoke about an accident. And I think the reason why we are all talking about this, every major global capital, every major global news network is talking about this, is because we are all worried about that accidental escalation. But I think Russia should have got the message by now, Burzin, that Russia is not going to get a reason or an excuse for an accidental escalation. It's not going to get a reason for that. And America clearly is not, you may want it, Tatiana, but America is not going to come on the table to sit and talk to Putin. NATO will not come on the table to sit and talk to Putin. This will carry on endlessly. And you'll also have too many casualties. Already, you know, your Russian landing ship was destroyed in the port. And that particular docking of the ship in the port, I think it's called Berdansk port, was hailed as an epic event. So you are taking hits. But you know, nobody is giving you the chance to escalate this. You're dragging this on.
Arnab, nobody wants to escalate it. And nobody wants to talk to Biden either.
Nobody wants to talk to Biden.
Of course. Why would Moscow want to talk to Biden in this instance?
I thought Putin had many rounds with Biden earlier. Why would he not want to talk to Biden? I think the end purpose of this is...
Now, again, what is going on? It's a special operation by Russian military forces. And Joe Biden has so far, right now, his role in this is, well, he's played it largely. You know, he's pushed Ukraine to this crisis very, very
there is Robert
well.
Bell. He's pushed it back there. Yeah.
Campaign.
Yeah.
And I don't know where you're getting your information. I mean, you're quoting the numbers that are being quoted by the Pentagon.
No, I'm not quoting any numbers quoted by the Pentagon. We have our own independent sources, and we have a huge reporting crew in Ukraine right now. I can tell you more than any Russian TV channel ever has. I don't think there's any Russian TV channel on the ground in Ukraine. I think it is. Tell me which Russian TV channel is reporting on the ground in Ukraine. I have multiple. All of them,
starting from RT and all of the Russians. Yes, all of the Russian TV channels.
Name the Russian Russia TV correspondent or bureau chief who is in Kiev right now.
Why would they be in Kiev?
No. So because you can't be in Kiev because you won't be allowed in there. Therefore, you have secondary sources. I have primary sources. My reporters are there, Tatiana. And Tatiana, see, are your tanks not being ambushed? Are they not running out of fuel? Are they not being stalled? Are they not being stopped by Ukrainian soldiers? Are they not stalled convoys right now outside Kiev where troops have been looting grocery stores?
No, they're not.
You don't want to believe it. Anyway, let's not digress. I want to go back to Professor Robert Bell. I want to understand Professor Robert Bell. We want to understand where is this going now? It's been 1 month.
Well, where it should go right now is in the direction that the United Nations has called for by a vote of 141 of the world's states. And that is a ceasefire coupled with the immediate beginnings of a complete withdrawal of Russian forces back to their start lines on February 24th. That's also the position that the 30 heads of state of NATO endorsed this morning meeting in Brussels.
But the United Nations is completely ineffective. You know that, Professor Bell. It's out of the question. The United Nations is out of the picture here. I know you're talking about the vote. I think the question is more on NATO. NATO should not be ambiguous in its response. And NATO should just begin the process of de-escalation. Which it's not. It's escalating it, Professor Bell, and that's my concern. It's really escalating it every day with the kind of words it's using.
Well, I'm under no illusions that the United Nations is going to send some intervention force into Ukraine to interpose itself between Russia and Ukraine. Neither is NATO, for that matter. But you asked me, where does this go? What is an acceptable end state? And that's what I'm trying to speak to.
I just feel maybe I put this to Sergey. 1 minute. Can I just put this quickly to Sergey, Dr. Sergey in Moscow. Dr. Sergey, can you hear me? Would it help if NATO were to offer direct talks with Putin? Since the real issue is between Putin and NATO, would it help if both sides begin a process of talks? Since this is all about NATO's expansion?
No, the thing is that for the time being, we can have a wishful thinking in any direction. But for the time being, as I see it, there is a very decisive position of NATO that it will not interfere militarily in the conflict, that it is not going in for negotiations too. We have some kind of diplomacy which is executed by some heads of state, and this is a very positive thing, of course. But what should be done, I suppose, that there should be a pressure upon the Ukrainian president for him to be as to decide things not as in a peaceful time, but have in mind that the military actions are going on, the operation is going on, and he is going to involve the whole nation into some kind of polls around the future agreement, which is not the way to solve things. And returning to the beginning of this conflict, it has a very, we should look not for the 1999, of course, but even much before, for several dozens of years, our concerns about NATO enlargement were not taken into account.
Yeah, they were not taken into account, but aren't things changing very rapidly right now? Aren't you under pressure? I mean, you may not want to say this, but everywhere it's being reported here. The Russian economy is under some great pressure. The G7 has tightened its hold. It's not just targeting the ruble, it has restricted your Russian central bank's use of gold in transactions. And Russia holds $130 billion of gold reserves. You can't use that. Yes, Tatiana, I know you'll brazen it out, but it's a fact.
I know all these arguments, of course.
That's not
but
true.
I do remember also that a couple, 10 years, 15 years ago, I don't know when, but another American president was saying that the Russian economy is lying in pieces. No, it is not lying in pieces. We should understand. We are a big country. We have the nation is large, and we are, so to say, addict to some kinds of not a very prosperous life.
No, but you are no. I want to question you here, and you know the thing is, Dr. Sergey, I must admire the way in which all my Russian panelists, and General Bakshi just coming to you, all my Russian panelists maintain, at least those who are for Putin, maintain this very headstrong attitude that nothing is going to happen to us, we're not going to be affected by anything, we are big, we are large, etc. But that's not true, Tatiana. Your economy is in spirals. You have to be realistic with me on this. Your economy is in shambles. The cost of insuring Russian debt has surged from 60% of probability of default last week to 87% probability of default this week. This is a reality. You may not.
Arnab.
Yes, Tatiana.
If we're talking about the reality, then you should take a look on the other side of that reality.
Okay, what's the other side?
Take a look at the dozens, hundreds, thousands of pictures of empty shelves in Europe. I am in Moscow. My colleague is in Moscow. We don't have empty shelves here. We have food on those shelves. We don't have any shortage of food, any shortage of produce. And
are you telling me? Burzin wants to respond to you. Yes, Burzin. She says we are fine. The rest of the world will suffer.
Respect to our Russian colleagues, Arnab.
Yes.
With all due respect to our Russian colleagues, what are you going to do with your 630 billion assets, gold and forex reserves? they are completely frozen. You have the 11th largest economy in the world, which is way down there in the second decadal rung, and it's going to slip further. You can't live on bartering. And Tatiana, I'm sorry if I may finish. If you bring in the Chinese element here, that Xi Jinping is going to save your skin, I'm afraid that's not going to happen for two quick reasons. Sino-Russian trade stands at $87 billion. Sino-global trade with the West stands at $950 billion. Xi Jinping knows which side his bread is buttered. He's not going to provoke us, and he knows, and he is in fact shocked to see Western determination on this aspect. And secondly, Arnab, the Chinese are never going to float the renminbi, the yuan. So you can forget that, even if you garner yuan currency reserves.
Yeah, this is all getting very, very hot. General Bakshi wants to come in. General Bakshi, yeah. General Bakshi. I think both sides are in denial here.
Arnab, may I make two observations from an India-centric or an Asia-centric point of view? World War I and World War II originated in Europe. And World War III, if it happens, is also going to originate in Europe. You know, they are doing everything possible to needle, to rile, and to make sure that they are irrational responses. Right?
Who is they?
The simple fact is that
for you, who is they?
The West. Okay, let me get very specific.
Yeah, get specific, please.
They
Thank
is
you.
the West. They is United States and Europe.
Right.
You know, let me get very specific. The simple fact is, NATO has said it won't put boots on the ground. Ditto for the United States. You know, Zelensky cried horse for a no-fly zone. No. He said, I want to join NATO. NATO said, we don't accept you. You're not qualified. But they are prepared to fight Russia to the last Ukrainian standing, the last building in the towns and cities of northern, eastern and southern Ukraine. They will fight till the last building goes down. What happens to the global economy recovering from COVID? What happens to the global economy recovering from COVID? What happens to our economy when oil had shot up to $135 a barrel?
But they're saying we didn't start it. They're saying we didn't start it. But didn't Russia know that the world was... No, I want to play devil's advocate with you. Didn't Russia know, General Bakshi, that the world... Let me put that question. Didn't Russia know? I want to go to Mohammad Hussain Malik from Tehran. Didn't Russia know that the world was suffering, was recovering from COVID? What is Russia's responsibility then? Dr. Malik? General Bakshi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Yes, Ambassador Malik. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me on this show.
Thank you.
I believe that this war is the war of a strategy and is the beginning of an effort by Russia, one party of the global order, in order to introduce the new order. Or redefine the new order. The COVID or any hunger or human miserability, these are these are nonsenses. Because when it comes to a strategy and security, I think the powerhouse of Russia would do the same thing as you see. If you let me just have contribution to some of the issues that it has already been raised. For example, when it came to the security of United States, they made the Raqqa and Mosul into the rubble. They destroyed every inch of these two cities in order to secure their interests. So this is the same thing for Russia too. They have to define the new formula, a new equation of the security in the world. So COVID or the other thing is nothing.
Well, I take your point there, but however, Patrick, I want to go back. I know it's about resetting. No, one second, General Bakshi, can I just get Patrick also, and I'm going to come back to you. I think both sides are in denial, and both sides are trying to stretch it out, and both sides are saying, we'll stretch it out, and the longer it stretches out, the better it is for us. And I think that's where both NATO and Russia are being unreasonable, and they're pushing the world on the brink. Patrick, I want to come to you on the issue of NATO. I think NATO could have offered to hold talks with Putin. It cannot be an ego issue at this level. Why is NATO passing the buck to Ukraine even now? NATO has effectively let Ukraine dangle for survival on its own, when all it's ready to give Zelensky is practical support to Ukraine as it continues to defend itself. What General Bakshi said, fight to the last Ukrainian. And why is NATO provoking Putin anymore? What's the need to provoke him any further?
Arnab, I don't see...
Yes, Peter. Yes, Patrick, I can hear you. Patrick? Did I lose the line with him? Can I throw the question? Okay, I'm going to reconnect with him. I want to throw the question back to Donald Jensen. Donald, you heard it there, have a summit. I said, why can't there be a summit to sort it out?
Well, there can be a summit. And by the way, I would disagree with your assessment of NATO, but that's beside the point. Sir, I want to go back to the point earlier in the discussion, which is that I think it's very clear from the few negotiating sessions that we've had that Zelensky is quite willing to withdraw the aspiration for eventual NATO membership if he has alternative security guarantees. I think that was an important development in the last week or two. The problem really is this war by Putin, a war against a country which the Kremlin says doesn't even exist. And I think there is agreement that, even by a lot of people in the West, that Ukraine, as I said, will never be in NATO. And if they want to withdraw that, a lot of people would be relieved. However, Ukraine can decide its security orientation, and Ukraine can ask for security guarantees. Those have been forthcoming, but that's a perfectly reasonable position to have. The accidental issue, as I said earlier, is a danger. Russia's complete operation in a fantasy land of propaganda and disinformation is very disturbing, because it doesn't even seem to be the case that the Kremlin is getting accurate information from the horrific losses they're getting in the field. And so both sides, as I said, need to calm down. We need to sit at the negotiating table, hammer out a realistic situation before it gets worse.
No, and that will... Who's calming? Nobody's calming down. Nobody's calming down, Donald. Everybody is escalating.
No, nobody is. I'm calling for people to calm down.
They should be calming down. They're not calming down. I mean, look at Russia. I mean, Russia was today, Tatiana, laying accusations against everyone and anyone. And today, the latest accusation is that Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, is part of a biological weapons race. And they said that he's... You heard that?
Yeah, I heard that, and it's fantasy, and it's disturbing when the Kremlin doesn't seem to be operating on this planet. No. So you're right, no one is calming down.
My question...
At the end of the day, Ukraine will agree to not be a NATO member, period. I think that's the case. But Ukraine also wants security guarantees. Ukraine also wants to be in the European Union. All of those are legitimate aspirations for a flawed but real democracy under threat from its big neighbor.
Yeah, I mean, I was taking off on that example. If Russia knew about Joe Biden's son being involved in bioweapons races through a company, why release the information perfectly in time for Joe Biden's visit to Europe? Tatiana, there are no explanations for this. Right. Why release the information now? What was happening till now?
Because they found new documentation. Contrary to what you're saying, Arnab, Russian forces are making advances every single day. And when they gain new ground, there's new information that comes to light. I love the fact that my counterparts from Washington seem to be completely oblivious to Hunter Biden's activities in Ukraine. And if you ask them, he was probably not even ever in Ukraine. I mean, it's all Putin's conspiracy theory. And yet, it is right now under investigation in the US. Because apparently, if you finally realize that the laptop that those letters came through was actually real. So, I mean, if somebody is living in a fantasy land, it's, it's our American friends.
Let's not prolong this, Tatiana. This is just becoming very, very prolonged. I mean, if you see today, Professor Suni, the words used about Boris Johnson, he said he's the most active participant in the race to be anti-Russian. So the whole...
Of course he is.
No, so let him be. I mean, why are you creating a situation of the whole world is against us? Why create a sense of Russian victimhood? Why? If you're winning,
Arnab,
if you're destroying Ukraine, and if you're just winning this war, why create a sense of victimhood? Why say the whole world is against us on a daily basis? Why spread fake videos of Zelensky's surrender? Why accuse Poland of escalation? Provocation has not worked for Russia in the past, Tatiana. Provocation never works for Russia.
Anybody. First of all, Russia has never provoked anybody. Second of all, Russia is not playing the victim. That is, unfortunately, that's a very unfortunate picture to paint coming from India, another big country that I'm sure would not like it to be portrayed as a victim of anything. We're not playing the victim. We're doing exactly what the Russian military has set out to do, destroying the Nazi element within Ukraine.
I'm just looking at the future, where this is going. I don't know. I mean, you see, there's political reasons also, I'm sure, why you need to keep this rhetoric up. I want to go to Professor Suni. I'm just giving a sense of things getting more complicated in the future. I'm just getting a sense, even from this conversation, things are going to get very complicated. And then what Donald said, Professor Suni, that there will be an accidental escalation and we'll all be paying the price for it. That's the real concern.
First of all, Donald and Ronald are on the same page here.
Yeah.
Let's get back to the main issues. There are two kinds of war now going on in Ukraine. One is a defensive war by Ukrainians who have been attacked by Russia. And they've shown that they can resist effectively. And Zelensky has shown, though he would like more help from NATO, that he's ready to compromise on the question of Ukraine being member of NATO. Putin has mentioned now that he is not for regime change in the sense of getting rid of Zelensky. So it may be that in this war, defensive on the side of Ukraine, and what I would call a terror war against civilians on the side of Russia, right, to force Zelensky to make these concessions.
Yeah.
In that context, maybe the best way forward is not between Biden, NATO on one side, and Russia on the other, but Zelensky and Russia in direct negotiations. And the president of Ukraine has actually proposed this. What we're likely to see in the near future is a new kind of either, on the one hand, Cold War, walls being built again, which I think would be a disaster for both Ukraine and for Russia, or a serious summit of some kind to sit down and rethink the international security structure in Europe that has failed. War is a failure. And this war shows that the expansion of NATO and Russia's resistance and its invasion have caused something disastrous for the world. And we ought to get out of this as quickly as possible.
Yeah, everybody's playing their cards. General Bakshi wants to respond to you. We're only looking at ground out there. This name calling is not going to help on either side. Who is responsible for it? We are sitting on the edge, General Bakshi. You know it. You have been wargaming situations. What do you think will happen militarily? Can you deny that what Donald said, that there could be accidental escalation very soon?
I agree entirely with him. Arnab, my thesis was limited wars against a nuclear backdrop. That was my PhD thesis, right? With the India-Pakistan dyad, we have been working precisely on these military scenarios for most of our service lives. How much can you push a nuclear-armed adversary against the wall?
Correct.
You know, in 1991, the USSR very calmly dismantled itself. You now want to push the Russian state, the Russian Federation, back down the economic precipice. And you think it must go down quietly, without a whimper, without a shot being fired a second time. It must oblige the West by going down without a shot being fired. Don't forget that in the Second World War, we must learn from military history, because if it does not repeat itself, it certainly rhymes. There were economic sanctions put on Japan to an extent that Japan decided, before we go down under, let's use it or lose it. So they attacked in Pearl Harbor. They were a non-nuclear country. At the end of the war, they were atom bombed when there was no need to. when there was no need to. They were already ready to throw in the towel. But just to demonstrate the atom bomb, America used it against Asiatic country, Japan. Right? Now you want to push the Russians down an economic precipice. You want to keep adding javelins and stingers to prolong this war for months, to try and humiliate Putin. And you think there will be no reaction? In that book, it's a wonderful playbook.
No, but
the other side has no right to react. If it does, it is aggressive, it is brutal, it is this. There could be accidental nuclear crossing.
That is what I'm saying, sir. That is what I'm saying. That is what I'm saying. General Bakshi, I've spoken to you. General Bakshi, you know, General Bakshi, that when we met about a couple of weeks back, we spoke about this, and you did say this, that there can be an accidental sparkling of a nuclear conflict, and we're all in that grey zone right now. You see, Professor Bell, where we believe it's theoretically possible but practically impossible. But I'm just watching right now a news feed coming into the Republic newsroom, and there's Boris Johnson addressing a NATO conference. The picture's on your screen, ladies and gentlemen, and he's saying loud and clear, he's saying repeatedly, you see the choice of his words, he's saying, down with Putin, down with Russia, Russia must fail. I'm going to be sending missiles, and we say lots and lots of missiles to Ukraine, and those missiles must be used against Russia. I'm going to beep into this for 10 seconds. Let's hear.
That way. How about that? Let's go to Natalia Drozdiak from Bloomberg.
Yeah, I'm right here. Thank you so much.
Yes.
I just had two quick questions. On the nuclear threat, how concrete is that? Can you give us a sense of those discussions? And secondly, you mentioned this morning that allies are examining ways to stop Putin from using Russia's gold reserves. Could you tell us whether those discussions have moved on today? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Natalia. So I think it's very important to stress that I think that the discussion of the use of nuclear weapons is a distraction, and it's intended to be a distraction from what is really going on. And that is a savage attack with conventional means on innocent people in urban centers in Ukraine. Absolutely barbaric use of artillery and mortars and rockets, as I've described, thermobaric bombs included, it now seems. That is what is going on. And what we're talking about is the right of the Ukrainian people to be equipped with the weapons to defend themselves. And all discussion of nuclear weapons is intended to frame this as a confrontation between Russia as a nuclear power and other nuclear powers. That's not what's going on. What's going on is a confrontation between Russia and entirely innocent people in Ukraine. That's what it's between. And what we're trying to do is help those people, and I think that is morally the right thing to do. On gold reserves,
I'm moving on that, and that's the point I want to raise here. I think he's being unrealistic and thoroughly unrealistic, Professor Robert Bell, when he says, this nuclear weapon thing is not even an issue. It's a distraction. It's nothing. We are going to give hundreds of missiles and thousands of missiles to Ukraine, and we'll keep arming Ukraine. The nuclear issue is not even an issue. I think that's very dismissive of global concern about the nuclear threat, Professor Bell.
Well, let's be clear from the day that Mr. Putin made his nuclear threats and put the Russian nuclear force into a operational mode of combat support, the United States has tried to keep the temperature very low on this. We have not raised our alert level. We have not put bombers on takeoff alert by runways. We've watched what Russia's done with its nuclear forces, and despite Mr. Putin's rhetoric, our intelligence seems to be that Russia itself has not taken the steps that you would expect a nuclear power to take if it were preparing for nuclear war. That doesn't mean that there couldn't be a decision to use a weapon somewhere. But in terms of a major strategic threat, we've not seen a practical side yet to be accompanied to Mr. Putin's rhetoric on nuclear issues.
Well, I don't think Putin or Russia will keep the world informed if it were to able to do that. I just think this is getting too edgy, Burzin. Do you agree with General Bakshi's statement there that the West has been repeatedly provoking Russia and expecting it not to react? And is he doing so even now?
I don't agree with the general. No, I don't agree, Arnab, and we are not pushing Russia to the precipice. It is one man who is taking Russia back into a dark age and ushering in a police state. What we would like to see, all of us would like to see, is a stable, strong Russia. We would like to see Article 87 of the Constitution invoked and 2/3 of the Duma ousting Putin, because this is a man who has...
No, but how can you direct that? I mean, I also find that, that's also contradictory. How can you say that we respect Russia, we want it to be stable? Yeah, one second. General Bakshi is really worked up on this. Yes, General Bakshi. General Bakshi wants to respond to you. Let's keep it quick. He's really getting angry now. Yeah, yes, please.
And what about Russian provocations? What about Russian provocations? And can I just...
One minute, Bursi. No. This is the thing. This is the point where the debate spins out of control. General Bakshi is responding. General Bakshi, I just feel, I'll tell you one thing. I feel Boris Johnson has begun to enjoy this opportunity of being a global statesman, etc. Yeah, please go on. I won't speak a word. Yeah. Yes, General Bakshi, please. It's me. I'm not provoking you.
No. The simple fact is, you call Ukraine a sovereign country. Nobody can dictate to Ukraine what kind of a alliance they should join, what kind of a government they should have. But you can dictate to the Russian people to overthrow their president. Right? That is civilized state behavior. Your diplomats go around trying to instigate colored revolutions. And the CIA. I mean, let's not go down that route at all. What I'm trying to tell you, Professor, is please go not by what I am saying, but a very respected American thinker like Professor John Mearsheimer. Kindly read his article in The Economist, when he tells you that this is America's fault. They have painted Russia into a corner and drawn this reaction. It's not me who's saying it, it is Professor Mearsheimer. And if you go by the venerable Professor Henry Kissinger, go by what he says. He says it should be settled maxim of American state policy, never to take on more than one major Asian power at a time. Well, you just gone and poked Russia and China in the eye.
Tomorrow, and also incidentally, a lot of there's going to be very.
I don't think the rest of us will find that very convincing.
Also keeping our viewers informed. Tomorrow there is a very significant Mohammed Malik. There is a very significant visit of the Chinese foreign minister. He's flying into New Delhi. He's having a series of meetings here in New Delhi with, I think, our India's national security advisor. I think he may meet the foreign minister as well. So yeah, there is fair amount of communication going on. I find that very significant given the hostilities between India and China in the past. Mohammed Malik, we're talking about repositioning, but what about the present? Are you as concerned about the present right now of something going wrong?
There is something of a concern from the Iranian perspective that we believe that the Iranians are trying. I believe that the Iranians are trying to adjust themselves to the new environment, which it was a little bit different from 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, we had a sort of alliance between China and Russia, and now we see a sort of cleavage between these two on the international scene. So for Iran, which does not, this war is not Iranian war, but since we are at odds with West and United States in all around,
so that's again
everybody.
So it's global realignment. So it's a global realignment.
Yeah,
but Dr. Sergey, going to you in Moscow, does Putin want a compromise? I am of a view that if Putin is offered, and I know Tatiana is going to jump at this, but if Putin is offered a face saver, I think he'll take it.
Well, if you ask me, I can speak for Putin as I can speak for you. You see, but what I am sure is that we shall not speak and speculate who will ruin whom, who will defeat whom, but we shall think about the way out, and on this way of thinking, we should think how to support the negotiations that are going on, how to to press in our understanding the Ukrainian side, in your understanding the Russian side, which were sure, but negotiations are going on, and this is a very significant thing, and we should think of every diplomatic efforts that may be implied on this direction.
Patrick, Boris Johnson just said out there at the summit, he said, Patrick, the general motto of the meeting in NATO, he says, Putin must wrap it up. And there's no more escalation. Putin must wrap it up. Does Boris Johnson expect Putin to respond that way? Yes, please, Patrick.
He was correct to my understanding. I don't understand, Arnab, why you said before that NATO is provoking Russia. We must repeat this again and again, that what we see in Ukraine is unprovoked, brutal invasion on independent country by its larger neighbor. So if you want to accuse NATO of anything, then only for providing support, military and humanitarian support to independent country, to a victim of invasion. So NATO is not part of this war, and this is very good news for the world and for the NATO.
Yeah, Patrick,
because Ukraine is not part of NATO, so this is.
No, I know, but you know,
everything what NATO can do is to provide the support to Ukraine.
Yeah, but Patrick,
and there is very clear de-escalation path.
Yeah, but Patrick, you know,
it was already stated in the UN.
Yeah.
Arnab, ask how many US soldiers are right now in Poland. NATO is not escalating anything, but how many American soldiers are on the ground right now in Eastern Europe?
What are you suggesting? What are they preparing for, Tatiana?
No, I'm not suggesting that they're preparing for anything. I'm suggesting that this has been a provocation for many, many years now.
What do you expect?
Boris Johnson personally,
if you're rampaging through Ukraine, do you expect America to be sitting with having a fireside chat somewhere in Alaska?
How is that a concern of America? It's very far away.
Okay, let me ask.
And what about Poland, which was wiped out the face of maps for 3 centuries, Tatiana? 3 times Poland has been erased from the face of maps, thanks to Russian annexation and invasion between the 17th and the 20th century. And you have the audacity to ask why American troops are in Poland?
Okay, now
the Poles know where they stand with you as Russians?
Okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is getting very heated. I just feel that NATO summits don't result in escalation. In 2016, and our viewers will remember, 20 NATO and partner countries, they held military drills in Poland. And after that, the Russian-Syrian coalition, they upped their attack in Syria, resulting in what happened in Aleppo. So we don't learn from history sometimes. I think the provocation is getting too intense. Ladies and gentlemen, I shall see you tomorrow. Live coverage of the swearing-in ceremony of Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath. That's tomorrow, live from Lucknow. Biggest coverage. See you tomorrow. Good night and goodbye.